try to typify mechanisms for gender digital equity in Latin America. In fact, probably what we will be speaking about will be also valid in many other countries and many other places of the world. But we restricted it to Latin America because it's the place we know the best. The outline is very simple. We will have an introduction. We will do some definitions of what we understand as digital equity. We will explain to you some gender gaps in the region so that some of you that are not from the region can conceptualize what we are talking about. We will talk about a little bit about the digital divide in Latin America and the Caribbean. And then we will try to explain to you what has been done, trying to close the gender digital gap, and some recommendations. In fact, in the last decades, many countries in Latin America and the Caribbean have made a big effort to close their gender gaps. However, gender digital divide is still prevalent in the region. In fact, our whole presentation will be based on the following belief, that the gender digital divide can only be overcome reaching gender equality and gender equity. And it's interesting that those terms have to be defined. A digital divide, as you have heard many times, is just the inequality in the power to communicate and to process information digitally. Gender equality means that women and men have equal opportunities or life chances to access and control socially valued goods and resources. That's equality. But what's equity? It means fairness of treatment for women and men according to their respective needs. It doesn't mean that everybody has to be treated the same. It doesn't mean that everybody has to be given the same opportunities. What it means is that you have to understand their needs and respond to them so that they will have the same opportunities. Here is a nice table, not produced by me, but it was produced by a guy that wanted to show what were the 10 top paying occupations in Latin America. As you can see, let me try to see myself. There are some positions, for example, directors and chief executives, and there are some other positions, and what I'm interested in is around the middle of the table, which is computing professionals. This line over here. You have, where's the mic? Here. Okay, this line over here, sadly, is the line that has the least share of women in the whole table, and also has the biggest gap in terms of earnings. What it says is that in the top professions in Latin America, women are the least present, and once we are present, we receive the worst paid salaries according to this table. See, the gap, the highest gap is precisely over here. Okay? No, in fact, once you have to try to understand what's going on in a region, you have to understand the inequality existing in the countries. So this table over here tries to measure which countries are more equitable and which countries have more inequality. So the Inequality Index is pretty interesting. What you do is you take the annual income of the richest 20% and divide it within the annual income of the poorest 20%. And that will give you an idea of how really equitable that society is. And here you have Latin America, and you have the US over here. So being a rich country does not mean that you have an equitable society inside it. But in here, for example, Uruguay is the country has the best distribution of wealth. In here, Honduras, at least at that time, was the country in Latin America with the worst distribution of wealth. And when you have so much inequality in a country, what happens is that some of the poorest in these societies have very, very little access to technology. In fact, they have very little access to food, they have very little access to education, they have very little access to health. So when you speak in a country that's really poor or that has so much inequality of giving people technology, the first answer that politicians will give you is you have to first give them food, then you have to give them education, then you have to give them health. And by the time you have given all those things, you have no money to give them technology. So what has been done in my countries to try to close the gender digital gap? First of things, many of probably men will say, well, if you close the digital gap, you automatically close the gender digital gap because all men and women will receive computers. My first point is that ICT users are not gender neutral. And we will be discussing that in the out for many hours. The thing is, it is necessary, the thing is women and men in many societies have different roles and have different, for example, opportunities to invest their own times. So giving technology is not enough. In fact, women also, especially in places where machismo is very ingrained, have to be given self-confidence to use the technology more often than men. In fact, empowering women will give them the capacity to cope with life requirements more effectively and to transform life conditions. And that's probably the main reason why we really ask for gender digital equity, because women have to be empowered and have to be able to use the technology to transform their own social conditions. In fact, many initiatives exist trying to build the capacity to use the technology, and the capacity to transform their own lives. Okay. In fact, mechanisms to reach digital equity are very diverse, and they must attack several dimensions. It's not only a technical issue. It's not only an economical issue. It requires much more. In fact, what we will do is we try to typify the mechanisms that there exist and try to explain the last one, because we have not seen that in the literature. So the three first ones are probably very well cited in the literature. Our contribution is trying to emphasize the importance of the fourth one. The first is providing women with access to technology. They have to have technology to be able to use it. The second one is allowing women to learn how to use standard software tools, which most projects to have digital equity are directed towards that direction. They teach women to use Word, Excel, maybe internet, but nothing more. And that's not enough. The third one is enabling women to learn how to use ICT to take control of their own lives. And that's very important. And the fourth one is creating gender consciousness in ICT design and construction, and attracting women to the ICT field. And now I will allow Marta to be enlightening you how to do it.
In fact, these four categories are not mutually exclusive. I mean, they can be used simultaneously, and all of them have challenges that have to be overcome. For example, the first and second, sometimes they have the problem that women cannot leave their homes because they have to take care of children or elder. So they cannot go to a public computer, or a telecenter, for example. And so in the first case, for example, mobile technologies become very important because they are personal. Sometimes women can have a computer at home, but they think that they are going to be for other members of the family. Yeah. But the mobile technology is for her. Yeah. So that's very important. In the case of enabling women, we can think about women who can use computers for learning about topics they are interested in, such as nutrition or health or children care, or trying to find job opportunities or selling the products they produce. Yeah. Or even increasing their self-esteem, trying to collaborate with other people, right? We have in the upper part the four mechanisms, and as Gabriela said, the fourth one, gender consciousness on ICT design, is very important for the other three. But any of the four mechanisms need means to be implemented, right? So we think that means such as financial resources, public policies, cost-effective ICT, e-learning tools, volunteers, ICT career promotion, and peer production. Here we refer to the possibility of establishing small companies, for example, that women can collaborate together to offer their own products, right? But these means have to be facilitated by actors that, of course, would include the ICT industry and the academia. But we think about an ICT community that's broader than that. And we would include the government, non-profit organizations, civil society, and media, right? And each of the actors can contribute some way to produce or facilitate different means to finally get to one of these mechanisms. So not necessarily coordinated, because we know that coordinating the government with many other of these can be difficult. But in fact, everybody can somehow contribute. Sometimes, for example, the non-profit organizations won't come from a region from Latin America. Japan, for example, has a great project, volunteers project, right? And many people from Japan are all around the world collaborating in such kind of projects, but not everybody knows about that kind of projects. So, some recommendations more about providing ICT access. Well, remember that, for example, I said that many women cannot leave their homes. So the ICT community should continue developing cost-efficient devices, protocols, and communications technologies in order to guarantee low-cost access to women, right? Because women are not, many times are not going to have enough money to pay for a very high cost technologies. And government policies can provide incentives and financial services to supply mobile technologies access to women also. In the case of educating of the use of standard applications, or in this case, it could be any of the actors who would be developing online training programs that may be very convenient, once again, to use this from home, right? So that they don't have to leave their other obligations, their domestic obligations. About empowering women, it's important to promote innovation and entrepreneurship among women, creating online content for them, but also trying to make them create the content that they are interested on, because it's not only that they're going to be consumers, but they should also be producers. That's going to engage them more in the process, and introducing them into the service sector, which we know that can produce higher wages than other fields. Right? All these issues should be important in this case. And finally, about gender consciousness on ICT design and construction, well, it's known that it's global, that not many women want to study computer science or related fields. But we think that women on ICT jobs or related jobs, ICT jobs, would be the voice of many unheard women and would help achieve gender digital equity. And that's important. We are different. Our bodies are different. Our needs are different. And we are the ones called to make other people conscious, aware of this difference. And it's not that we wanted to be treated differently, it's that we wanted to be treated with equity, right? So women, because of their obligations, many times domestic obligations, roles, have different needs. And other women can understand these needs better than men. And attracting women to ICT college careers and empower them to play a proactive role in the professional field is, of course, a big challenge. I think we don't know how to do that. At least in the case of our university, we do as much as possible. I'm proud to say that for this year, we got 23% of women how do you say, first year girls. That was high for us. After 5 years of 14%, 23% was relatively very high. And I'm proud to say that, but we don't know why. I mean, it's mysterious, really, right? So now it's difficult to do research to prove the possible impacts of what we propose: gender consciousness, technology design, and greater presence of women in the ICT field on gender digital equity. I mean, we cannot tell you this works because we made an experiment, right? In fact, it will be a very long-term experiment, and cause-effect factors on long-term societal phenomena are very hard to measure. Right? So we invite you and others to propose mechanisms to address this issue and help us demonstrate the impact of our proposed mechanisms. Yeah? Just to conclude, the ICT community, this broad concept of ICT community we introduced, can contribute to design and implement solutions to increase gender digital equity, and women in ICT-related jobs should have the opportunity of participating in the definition of gender digital equality and equity policies. Thank you. Questions?